I love how just two Korg Volcas and the Arturia Microfreak can create a full techno groove. In this video, I'll take you through the whole setup. I'll walk you through the exact cables you need and the steps you need to take in order to sync these devices up, lay down a bass line, and create some simple but fun and interesting chord patterns. All right, let's get started. The first thing we're going to need is a MIDI cable connected to a 1/8 inch TRS MIDI adapter. This is a Type B adapter that we're going to hook up to the MIDI out port of the Microfreak. Then we'll take the other end of that cable and plug it into the MIDI in port of the Korg Volca Keys. Next, we'll take a 1/8 inch patch cable and plug that into the clock out port of the Microfreak. Not only will that sync up the tempo of the Microfreak and the Volcas, and it will send stop and play data from the Microfreak to the Volcas, meaning that when we press play on the Microfreak, it will play music from the Volcas, and when we stop playing from the Microfreak, it'll stop the Volcas. So I'll plug the other end of that cable into the sync in jack of the Korg Volca Sample. Then I'll grab another patch cable and plug it into the sync out jack of the Volca Sample and into the sync in jack of the Volca Keys. And finally, I'll plug some stereo cables into the audio out jacks of all of these devices. Those cables are going to go into my mixer, which is where the audio is going to come out from. You know what? Before we move on, let's change the lighting a bit. And with gimmicky editing out of the way, I'm going to put my Microfreak on the init setting. This is the default patch. Notice that I've got the master volume turned down all the way on the Microfreak. This is because using the MIDI cable, we are actually going to sequence a bass line on the Volca Keys using the keyboard on the Microfreak because it's way easier than using that tiny little keyboard on the keys. And I only want to hear the sound coming out of the keys, not the Microfreak. Notice how much easier it is to play a chord on the Volca Keys when it's on poly mode using the Microfreak's keyboard. Before I create my Volca Keys sequence, I'm going to unplug the patch cable going from the Volca Sample into the Volca Keys from the sync in jack of the Volca Keys. When synced up like this, I find that for whatever reason, I can't quite control certain parameters of the Volca Keys like the VCF or the envelope, but it works just fine when the sync in and out cables are unplugged from it. Don't worry, we're going to plug them back in a bit when we play the sequence back using the Microfreak. On the Volca Keys, I'll hold down function metronome so that the metronome will play, and function and trigger sync. And then I'll hit record. Now, nothing is recording yet, but by having trigger sync enabled, the very first note I play will cause the Volca Keys to start recording. This way, I don't have to wait for the Volca Keys to cycle through an entire sequence to get my timing right. It will just record automatically on the first note and on the first beat. So I've recorded my sequence on the keys by using the keyboard of the Microfreak, but remember the playback is coming from the keys. It's not currently synced up to the Microfreak because we had disconnected that patch cable from the sample to the keys. Let's turn off that metronome and disable recording. Gonna remove the MIDI cable from the Volca Keys because we won't be needing that anymore, and I don't want the Microfreak to be controlling the keys since we've got our sequence recorded already. Let's also sync these devices back up by plugging that patch cable back into the sync in jack of the Volca Keys. Now all playback and tempo data will be sent from the Microfreak to the Volcas. To do that, I'm going to hold shift and sequence on the Microfreak to enter sequencer mode and press play on the Volca Keys. So when I hit play on the Microfreak, it'll initiate sequence playback from the keys. Now I can adjust the tempo of the Volca Keys sequence using the Microfreak. Since we're making a techno track, let's take that tempo up to about 130 beats per minute. I'll also double the tempo of the sequence from the keys by holding function and the 1/2 button. We'll play the sequence back on the keys and mess around with some of the parameters. Now I'll show you the drum beat that I made on the Korg Volca Sample. I'm not going to go into how I sequenced this because I've already done so many videos about it, but if you are interested, I'll link those videos in the description as well as a link to my 25 Essential Drum Patterns PDF, which you can reference for creating your own drum patterns in all types of genres. So I'll press play on the sample and then press play on the Microfreak to get the beat going. Let's listen to the sample and the keys together. I'll press play on both of these devices and then I'll press play on the Microfreak. Now let's get a sequence going on the Microfreak itself. I'll start by turning the volume back up, and here's the default patch. Why don't we bring that up an octave? Right now, the sound is monophonic, but I can play chords up to 4 notes at a time by hitting the paraphonic button at the top. So let's get a 16-step chord sequence going. I'll add a few rests in between notes just to give it a little more groove and rhythm. Notice that it shows what step I'm on and which notes I'm playing. I'll add 2 rests, a few more. This is an A minor chord, by the way. All right, let's see how that sounds. I'll do a second sequence in the bank for sequence B, but let's do an E minor chord this time. One cool thing you can do is transpose your pattern by holding down a key on the keyboard. Another cool thing I can do is adjust the time division by clicking the rate/swing button. Now let's check out some of the waveforms and wavetables and see if we can land on something cool sounding. And as I go through, I'll make adjustments to the wave, timbre, and shape. I could literally spend all day cycling through the waveforms and playing around with them, but let's settle on the basic waves saw wave. Let's create some modulation using the mod matrix. How about we modulate the cutoff frequency with the LFO shape? Let's bring up the amount to around 50 so we can make sure that we hear it. And you'll notice that the cutoff frequency goes up and down with the shape of the sine wave at the same rate. And we can make that rate faster or slower. And we can change the shape of the modulation. And even introduce some randomness. I think I'll do something with the rising shape. Yeah, I think the full note speed sounds pretty good. Now check out what happens when I adjust the amount on the matrix. Great, now that we've got all of our sounds in place, let's jam. I'm going to start with the cutoff all the way down on the Microfreak so that we've just got the keys and sample playing at first, but then I'll slowly fade it in. As I go through, I'm just kind of adding things in, taking them out, and tweaking parameters here and there, like the cutoff frequency. Here I'm trying to see if I can get a cool kind of pumping effect with the cutoff modulation. I got so into jamming I completely forgot about sequence B with the E minor chord. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you found this video helpful. Leave a comment and let me know if you have any questions, or just let me know what you'd like to see next. I would love to hear from you. Till next time.